Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Tammy Billups. And she's here today to share with us her new book, Animal Soul Contracts, Sacred Agreements for Sacred Evolution. Now, Tammy is a transformational soul healer and pioneer on the animal-human sacred soul partnerships. She's a sought-after holistic healer, the creator of the animal-human tandem healings, and a certified interface therapist. She's appeared on CNN, The Daily Square, Primetime Live, ABC, and Oprah. So let's welcome to the show, Tammy Billups.
Thank you so much for having me, Marianne.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here to talk about this book. And I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
It's funny because this book, my previous book, took 7 years from the inception of the idea to holding a book in my hands. And this book was not on the radar at all until after I adopted my 2 kitties that I'm living with right now. And things came together pretty quickly after I recognized their souls. And so they were really part of prompting this, the idea for the book. And I was sitting in the silence one day and immediately I just got this feeling about this book. And I actually saw that image of the pyramid of the 7 different levels of types of contracts that's in the book. And it just came together pretty quickly. It's based on, of course, a lot of my work, but I wasn't planning on really sharing, I guess, this part of it. But once it came through, it happened very quickly.
Oh, my goodness. It sounds like quite a revelation you had. So what was that like? I mean, how did that come together?
Well, I mean, I adopted these 2 boys, and I was not really ready to adopt kitties again. It was interesting. It wasn't on the radar at all. And I thought, I've got a book tour with my previous book, Soul Healing with Our Animal Companions. And that was happening. And I thought, when my 2 elder kitties passed, I thought, I'm just going to go a while and not get an animal. And I'm laughing because, of course, I'm so not in control of what happens. Spirits in control. And once these guys came into my life and I started doing sessions on them, healing sessions, I'm really blessed in that I can get a lot of information during sessions. And so once I realized that they've been with me before many times and that we had contracted to be together and what we were going to be learning together, then I thought I've got to be able to share what I know about animal soul contracts with everyone. So I immediately started writing. I reached out to my publisher, and I had reached out to them before several times and just didn't hear back. You hear about those stories all the time, right? And with this idea, I emailed my publisher and said, this is what I want to write about. It's a whole different level to my work. I didn't touch on in the first book. And I heard back from him within the hour. And he said, I love this idea. Bring me this and this and this. And a year and a half later, there's a book in my hands.
So let's go ahead and dive into some of the actual meat and potatoes of this. So when you talk about animal and human soul contracts, what is that all about?
Yeah, well, a soul contract is an agreement between 2 beings to expand their growth in this lifetime. So our souls agree upon these lessons and growth to work on for our mutual healing and development. We do this with people, and I think that's probably much more well documented that we have these soul contracts with those that are in our lives that we share our lives with. But we actually have that with animals as well, where we prearrange our higher selves, or that superconscious part of our souls that are always talking and remember everything. They can actually arrange for these animals to come into our lives and help us heal different things together, or clear karma, or maybe allow in some of the pinnacle teachings of course, that unconditional love or grace or patience, whatever that would be. It's really fascinating.
So how did you come to the point where you realized that this was something that everyone has with their pets and that this would be useful information?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I've been working for 20 years with animals and their people. And I've done thousands and thousands of sessions. I've donated over 1,000 sessions to no kill organizations as well. And I usually get, of course, the cases where the animals are deemed unadoptable because they've got this trauma from their background. So while doing these sessions over the years, I've just been taking good notes, and there are consistencies that I see in all beings that I've been working on with this predestined soul contracts that they have to evolve their soul. And when they come into a home with someone, they're absolutely going to be having contracts with them so that they can mutually evolve.
So, when you talk about tandem healing sessions in your book, what is that like? And is that for pets that are living? Is it for pets that have passed? How does that work?
Yeah, the tandem healings are for. I work with souls and bodies mainly, so it's really great. Tandem healings work best when I'm working with a person and an animal that are ready to take those deeper dives into the emotional work or reasons why they called in the animals into their lives. So I've always wanted to do tandem healings even since I began my practice almost 20 years ago, and just really began doing this formally years ago, because I would see that people would call about their animals and they would say, oh, they've got this behavior, or oh, they've got this physical issue. And the sessions would immediately heal and pivot the animal to a better place. And the person would say, oh my gosh, they're so peaceful now. Thank you. But then sometimes they would revert back to their behavior or get another physical ailment. And I thought, well, I'm trained. I'm first and foremost trained as a certified interface therapist to work with people on their emotional wounds, traumas, and any physical issues that they want to work on. And so if I get the person on board at the same time, would they stick and would they be mutually beneficial in the long run? And the answer, once I started doing hundreds of case studies on this, of connecting formally, heart to heart, soul to soul, simultaneously with a person and their animal. And once I started doing that with the case studies, I was just amazed at the difference it could make, long term and short term, by having the person say, I'm willing to look at my abandonment issues if I've called in this animal that has an abandonment issue, because unresolved, then they've got separation anxiety, you've got a codependent relationship within that specific example. So healing together simultaneously, and the person working on their unresolved abandonment wounds will help their animals maybe even faster than just focusing on the animal, fixing the animal and their behavior.
So, what is a case study you can share with us as an example so our listeners can really understand how this all works?
Oh my gosh, I got so many. Let me choose one. Okay, well, I think the very first tandem healing story that really moved me is I was working with a client, Jody, and her dog, Jet. And Jody's, what she wanted to work on is that Jet had instantly got, all of a sudden he had an extreme case of separation anxiety after Jody's mother passed, and Jody's mother passed in their house. The three of them were living together, Jody and her mom and her dog Jet. And after Jody's mom passed, all of a sudden Jet had extreme separation anxiety when Jody went to work. And Jody was assuming that it was because Jet was by himself, for the first time ever. But as things came out during the sessions, once we started these tandem healing sessions, is that Jody had all of this enormous grief. She had been a caretaker all of her life. She had been abandoned multiple times. And she was the one that was the first time in her entire life that she was alone. And she was completely projecting all of her fears onto Jet. She had a camera on him 24/7. And, he would just sit and pace and look at the door while she was gone. And she had been trying everything to fix Jet and not really looking at her grief and what she had been through losing, a husband her father, mother, I mean, it's such a long list of all of this pain. And each time that she had a loss, she just pivoted into taking care of the next soul instead of dealing with her grief. And so she went deep, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch because she started releasing the grief. And I asked her not to look at the camera with Jet and just tell him that he's going to be fine by himself, because anytime we're telling that to one of our animals, we're telling it to the part of ourself that needs to hear it as well. So it was pretty soon after that Jet didn't have, the separation anxiety, once she realized that it was really her that he was representing and holding that space and that mirror, that reflection of truth for what she was feeling. It was just amazing. I mean, I forget how many sessions they did. I required people do 4 in the case studies, but they really quickly pivoted out of that. The grief is showing, and then releasing the grief they had, and then moving into a much healthier, independent place. It was beautiful to see how vulnerable Jody was willing to be to release her grief.
That must have been such a beautiful thing to see, that transition. Is that something that you commonly see with people, where if they're having an animal that has issues, it's really something that's being mirrored, with the person, and vice versa? Maybe the person they're struggling through a disease and the animal develops it. Does that happen?
Oh, yes, it does. Absolutely. Now, whether or not it actually shows up physically, that's the number. That's the first soul agreement on the pyramid list, is the physical agreements. And it can absolutely happen where you have a physical ailment and your animal will take on the same exact physical ailment as a part of you guys that signed up to heal that together. That happened with me, with my animals in my 20s and 30s, before I started taking my own personal deep dive into my emotional wounding. And now it happens. Now it doesn't happen. Well, it rarely happens, I should say. It used to be where, anything I would get, my animals would, but it's not always the case. But with some people, they have signed up to have that type of really in your face physical reflection.
I was so surprised to see the different levels of soul contracts with animals. And I'd love for you to share that with our listeners. And how did you come to the point where you were seeing all this?
Well, I guess I'll answer the second part of that first, because this just evolved through my work. Through all of the sessions that I've done, I just started seeing different types of agreements energetically that were happening between the animal and the person that I was working with. And that's just the way that I see energy. Everyone's a little different with what they see, but I can see these defense patterns energetically around people regarding certain emotional wounds, be it betrayal, invasiveness, abandonment, denial of self, or terror. And I'm not quite sure why it works that way, but it does. So I've always seen this, but to have it come together, listed for the book, was something that happened in that meditation after I got the boys, which was really interesting. That all of a sudden it was clear that all of this work that I'd done, and it was coming together in that way, and it also showed me the different vibration level of each agreement. And that's why there's 7, with the highest one being that unconditional love, or the pinnacle teachings. But the agreements are the different levels of the soul contracts. It starts with the physical agreements, and then which we talked about. And then the next one up is the emotional wound agreements, which we've also discussed, where we're mirroring and carrying and healing specific emotional wounds together. And then there's the projection agreements, which, we talked a little bit about with Jody's story, how she had kind of projected what she was working on onto her animal, and Jet carried that willingly for her. And then there's karma agreements, where we're definitely, animals and people, we've got this karma that we're clearing, and absolutely they will reflect that back for us and help us with that, as well as we're helping them heal their karma. And then there's the unconscious mirroring agreements. And then above that is the symbolism agreements, where they'll be working out symbolically in the heat of the moment, where you maybe need an answer to something. You'll see your animal do something that's extraordinary, and it's a message in that moment. We get a lot of those from nature as well, where a certain animal will come in or a bird will fly on the, there's an immediate symbolism type of agreement or contract with them. And then there's the seventh, of course, is that pinnacle teachings that we talked about as well.
So I know you get into a lot of different situations with animals. When we look at animals that have been returned or rehomed, what are some of the things we can kind of expect to see with that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about that, because with animal lovers, whenever somebody says that they had to return or rehome somebody, they can get their feathers ruffled quite a bit. And so, but there's always this higher picture to what's happening, in the, I think it was in the karma agreements. I have a story about Mary Kathleen and her dog Scruffy, where she adopted a dog that she brought into the house with her other two dogs and two cats. And that dog that she adopted and brought in, and she had so related to this dog, and she really wanted to save her. I think it was a female. And the details are in the book, but that dog would go after her one dog, Scruffy, as in like really go after her dog. And she kept having hopes that it would work. And then she ultimately had to make that decision to protect Scruffy, her other dog, and return him. And she was just someone that had never returned an animal, and just couldn't get that concept out of her head of judging herself. But know that there's always a higher picture. And there was a higher picture that came in with that dog that she'd adopted, because it was representing symbolically something for her work around bullying. She'd been bullied, and Scruffy was being bullied, and there was some mirroring that was happening. But it's just important to know that if someone chooses to rehome, that's part of that animal soul path. And they're finding their way to their right and perfect forever home. But just like people who have many different relationships, some of us have more than others, where, you're wanting to have different experiences at a soul level. And animals can be that way as well. So I just really encourage people that if you hear that story and is tapping into any judgment, to go within and know that there is a higher picture and a higher purpose to that animal's growth. That when there's an animal that's been abandoned time and time and time again, returned and abandoned, they're trying to learn, they're trying to get that. And hopefully they eventually will heal their abandonment wound to get with that person that they've really teamed up to be with, so that they can heal that for good.
So in your book, you talk about how our animal companions can actually be part of a divine partnership. I'd love for you to expand on that.
Oh my gosh, yes. We've teamed up together. We have, especially for those that are introverts, empaths, who maybe have been abused by people themselves. And so animals are safer. And, I certainly fall into this. The animals have been some of my best teachers. But to know that when it's the case where people maybe are allowing in less, people to get close to them, and maybe they do, or maybe it's both, but yet they're going to be turning to animals more for that, because we are social, beings. We need to be social, and we need to be touched, kindly. And of course, animals have stepped up to the plate so much with that. But there is this higher divine picture of coming together for our mutual growth. The more that we're relying on animals and we're letting them get in our hearts, the more they are used by the universe for our teachings. The more they're going to be mirroring us, the more contracts we're going to have, because there are many operating within each pairing simultaneously for our mutual growth. It's really extraordinary. There are animals, I believe, in kind of our peer group on the other side. We have these soul groups, I believe, that we incarnate with for our mutual growth. But I have learned through sessions over the years that we also have certain animals that are part of our soul group that will incarnate with us time and time again as well. And that's why sometimes it's really easy to recognize in an animal that we see. It's like, I loved them right from the beginning. That's their soul recognizing their soul. And the longer you you have been incarnating with that animal for your mutual growth, the closer you're going to instinctively and automatically feel with that animal, because the love that you have for each other is longstanding.
So, can our spirit guides incarnate as one of our pets?
They can, yes. And boy, that's really a deep connection. And you'll know that when you have an animal that you just have such a deep heart connection. Those are the ones where people will call me and they'll say, "This animal is my soulmate." And they'll be so strongly connected to that animal. And frequently that is one of your guides or one of your, more human shaped souls that are going to be incarnating as that, through that animal.
So, let's say that you have a family that has adopted an animal. How do they determine who the animal is mirroring, or can the animal mirror many people at the same time?
They can. That's such a great question. Yes, when there's a family, there's going to be different soul contracts with each person in the house, and they will be marrying different people at different times. And I deal with this a lot, and am talking to 2 or 3 people. I do all my sessions remotely, so sometimes I'm on speakerphone and talking to the whole family with the sessions. And some of them are relating to certain traits of the animals, and the others not. It's just like how there's always one person that sees the good and the other one that's being more triggered by the animal. And you can trust when the animal is a button pusher for you. If they always do this and they always get on the bed, or whatever it is that the person's being triggered about, that's a different contract than the other one, right? And if they're both opportunities to evolve together, but they can definitely have different contracts, different mirroring agreements within each person in the house.
Do you find that when you do healing sessions with an animal and the entire family, that sometimes that can be very complex, or is it easy for you to work through?
If every it can be more complex if there's someone in the house that's just not willing to look at that, which of course that happens a lot, and that's okay. So it's an opportunity for the other people to just accept that person for where they are, and maybe they're not going to look at the deeper contracts or really ready to work with that in their life yet. And that's okay, because on some level the seeds are still being planted, and maybe later in their life they'll look back and remember what that animal taught them and be able to see that more clearly. And that's okay. It's divine and right and perfect timing. But when it's one-on-one, yes, I guess it's easier then, but I enjoy it all, because whenever I can do a scene, there's a child, maybe a teenager, and the husband and the wife, or the partners. It's everyone's getting exposure to these higher teachings that the animals have come in their lives to share with them, and that to me is always a blessing, and honoring the animal.
What are some of the common things that people come to you for?
Well, it will be anywhere from behaviors that maybe, they're looking to help their animal heal from trauma or heal from something that they're doing that the person doesn't, like maybe they're have inappropriate urination. Maybe they have behaviors that I'm trying to think of some other specific examples. It's individual with what triggers people. But the person also, if I can get them on board with it, then they're going to be healing together. A lot of times it's the animals, maybe their last year, and they've got lots of physical issues, and they're hoping to get the animal more comfortable or set up a better energetic environment so that the physical can heal, which we know that can happen. And I've seen it happen time and time again, or animals maybe get 3 more lives when they were given 3 days, because the energetic component of it can help release those emotional wounds. But I believe they've been in those instances where I'm working on the animal, that if the person is healing along with them and looking at that so that they can still be in partnership for their contracts and help them unfold as they should.
So in your book, you talk about our inner room. What is that, and why would that be something we would want to access?
Oh my gosh, no one's asked me this. I love this question. I love this question. So our inner room is that inner spark of the divine that is us. And I shared in the book that I had a dream right before I started writing the manuscript that I found this new inner room in this house I was in, and that it was dusty and dingy, and I immediately knew how I was going to purpose the room. I was going to bring my inner light to it, and that it would flow out into the house. And we all have this inner room within us, this divine spark that is us, that is a high vibration, that we just need to remove the cobwebs and the protection around it so that we can expand and show the world us, our true selves and what we came to do. And it's a lot of work to unclog that light and really expand it, because we've been taught not to do that. But it's all within us. There's always this space within us that is it's so imperative that we learn to reveal it more and more so that we can love ourselves and show the world how good we are and how much we want to serve. And really, it's that light within that needs to be seen. And we all have that space.
I think that's so beautiful. Now, is that a space that we can also commune with our animals?
Well, certainly our light is communing with their light. I mean, theirs get less, clogged. There's not as much protection around their light. It's easy to see in them what their light is, but of course they're just reflecting back a part of us. So we can certainly always commune. And I have a meditation in the book where we go to our heart space and we tap into this divine golden cord from our heart to our animal's heart and get to learn more about asking them direct questions heart to heart, so that we can begin to trust that deep, beautiful connection that is always there. There is this cord that will forever be with your animal even after they've passed. That you can tap into that when you go to your heart and tap into that cord that's connected to your animal's heart and get answers to big questions that you have or big decisions you're trying to make, and people wanting to know what their animals are thinking. They can learn to go to that inner place and connect heart to heart and get those answers.
So, Tammy, where can our listeners go to connect with you, learn about your work and your other books, and be part of your community?
Oh, please go to my website, tammybillups.com, TAMMYBILLUPS.com. All my events on there. I have master classes about the books and the content in the books, and the books are on there. My meditation CDs are on there as well. And the different service that I have, I also offer mentoring and coaching for other animal practitioners. So that's a one-stop shop. They could just go there.
Well, Tammy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Tammy. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, talk about your new book, Animal Soul Contracts, Sacred Agreements for Sacred Evolution. If you'd like to connect with Tammy, again, you can at tammybillups.com for more information. Animal Soul Contracts is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Mary Ann. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.